It's a new year, and many like myself look to the next 12 months, the same as we did the previous year, with hope and confidence that 0079 will be the best year yet. It's January 3rd, and my holiday summer break is coming to an end. I had returned to Sydney, Australia to visit my parents for Christmas. This being my last official day off before I began to pack my things to return to college, I made plans to go out with my old friends from high school. I'm not originally from here, but after my dad retired from the military, he wanted to move the family back to his birthplace. I objected to the idea at first. Unfortunately, my vote and veto were overruled by my mother. I wanted to stay mad at her, but she does cook some really good meals, so I eventually let it slide. We moved here just before I started high school. I finished up my breakfast my mom had made for me in the kitchen. My dad's eyes are glued to the television on the wall. Did something happen? I asked. The space colonies furthest from us just declared their independence from us, he says. A politician is asked a question by a news correspondent regarding the Declaration of Independence. He states that the matter would be resolved fairly quickly, that the declaration does not reflect the views of the vast majority of the population living in the colonies furthest from the Earth. This is the result of a few rogues acting independently from the rest of the government there. I ran my campaign on the promise to keep peace in the Earth sphere, and I have done just that. Earth remains safe as always. Our citizens should have nothing to worry about. He gives a stereotypical fake big political smile so many politicians make after they finish giving non-answers. The politician leaves the press area the moment an aide whispers something into his ear. The camera doesn't get a clear view of his face, but from what I can tell, it seems there is some shock written into his facial expression. My phone rings. My friends are outside my home waiting for me in a white Jeep. I dismiss myself from the table and grab my surfboard. I go outside to greet my friends, whom I rarely see now that my college campus is hundreds of miles away. There are 4 of them in the Jeep, all of whom I met when I joined the high school swim team. There's Steve, who sits in the driver's seat. He tends to wear sleeveless shirts like he's always going to the beach. I suppose it's appropriate attire since that's where we're going today. His short blonde hair combed back is a new addition, likely from joining the military. The sunglasses tended to always be there. Dylan sits in the front passenger seat. He still keeps the long ponytail, and he pretty much matches what Steve is wearing. Behind them sit Maggie and Valerie, a pair of brunette twins. They each wear their bikinis underneath their tank tops and jean shorts. Even though they're twins, I used to have a real big crush on Maggie. She doesn't know, I think, that she was why I joined the swim team in the first place. The things someone would do for their first real crush when they're young. I did eventually ask her out sophomore year. We went out on one date that I recall went well. Then her and her family went away for a few months to one of the cities on the moon. Anyways, if Maggie is the introvert of the two, Valerie is most definitely the extrovert. She tells me to hurry up in her usual energetic voice. I greet them all and sit in the back seat with Maggie and Valerie. Steve turns on the engine and drives off to the beach. Dylan turns on the radio for some music and to see if there's any traffic news we should know about while on the road. He flips through several stations. The only news anyone reports about is about the most distant group of colonies' Declaration of Independence. Some stations talk seriously about the situation, like traditional news outlets. Most, on the other hand, joke or mock the colonies for the move. Best be careful, Steve. The military might be sending you to put some space noise in check, Dylan says. I wouldn't worry about it. We already have some forces stationed near them. I'm also only in the reserves now. The only way I get called back in is if things get really desperate, Steve says in his usual overconfident way. So, you're the desperate measures, I say jokingly. Exactly. How did they contact you specifically if that happens? Maggie asked. If they can't reach me by phone or messenger, they'll send some MP officers to find me at my last known location. How did they know what your last known location is? They track my phone. Comes with the job, I suppose. At least it also comes with a free paycheck. Dylan turns off the radio, and we no longer speak on the subject. All we want are smiles and a good time at the beach. We arrive at the beach still fairly early in the morning and beat most of the other beachgoers. It has been some time since I last went out to surf. Despite Brisbane having access to relatively good surf locations, most of my time at the University of Queensland is spent on my studies and part-time job. I can hear the ocean waves crashing before I can see them. The noise of the water, seabirds, and our footsteps on the sand flood my ears, and the wind greets my face with a steady breeze. We spent some 3 hours at the beach, with most of our time trying to surf spent in the first hour before more tourists arrive. I say trying to surf because at most I'm only able to catch some 5 seconds of wave before falling back into the water. Then again, I was never all that good at the sport. Steve laughs at my poor performance until a string of bad luck strikes him in his attempts to show off in front of Maggie and Valerie. Dylan keeps more to himself and has the best performance out of the group. "You keep your head in your books too much," he says to me, "but maybe that's why you'll make it further than the rest of us in life." Dylan has a habit of speaking like in a fortune cookie way. Sometimes he can give off the impression that he may in fact be some kind of psychic. Whenever he's asked about it, he says it's more of a feeling that he gets. With the arrival of a large crowd, we decide to rest on the sand underneath our umbrellas. Maggie and I walk to the Jeep to pick up some extra water bottles, while also looking for a trash bin to throw away our used ones. We talk for most of our walk, trying to best avoid any awkward silent moments. I think that's how it's always been between us. The other constantly scrambling in their thoughts for the next thing to say, all the while never wanting to say the obvious. It should be easy for young adults such as ourselves to attempt to rekindle of a potential connection we once shared. The only thing in our way is the distance. Brisbane is roughly a 10.5-hour long drive away. A less cautious pair of young fools would likely have taken the risk long ago, even if just for a night. If we didn't know each other to the extent that we do, something very well could have already happened. But she's not just some other girl to me. We don't say it, and we likely never will, that there appears to be a lack of trust in what will come after I graduate this year. I figure I may return here to Sydney for a bit. I confess, however, that I have been yearning for some exploration as a celebration and reward for at last completing my studies, whether it be traveling to some other part of the world for vacation, or perhaps at last visiting the space colonies and the moon. I have yet to decide, and there's no way of knowing if I will ever fully return here to plant my roots. Maybe some part of me already knows that this is not where I am to live out the rest of my life. And another part of me knows that it will break my heart when I finally realize that it's time to say goodbye. Maggie tells me that she's happy to have been able to see me again, and to not forget about them. I know she really means not to forget about her. I'm not sure if anyone ever forgets their first real crush. Maggie takes my phone and takes a selfie picture with me just before we rejoin with the others. "You better not lose it," she tells me. "I won't," I tell her and send her a copy of the picture. There's an urge to tell her to come with me after I'm done with school, but I know she's really close to her sister and family. And so, all the things that we want to say remain left unsaid after the moment has passed. Dylan spots us after we finish taking a photo and asks to take a group picture. I'm glad he brought it up, because I was feeling too shy to ask for one. Being the openly sentimental type has never been a strength of mine. He tells me to keep the picture as a reminder to live in the moment every once in a while, and not always be thinking 6 months into the future. Again, with his fortune cookie ways. "Hey, is that an MP officer?" Valerie asks. She points at a man in military uniform with a black armband carrying the letters MP on it. Behind him is his military jeep. There's no doubt about it, Steve says, like he's expecting someone to come and take the fun away. "You don't think he's here for you, do you?" "Wait, what are those lights?" Maggie asks. She points up at the sky where 2 balls of light are seen flashing in the middle of the day. Being an astrophysics major, I explain my best guesses are that they're either from a distant star that went supernova, or a large explosion from a large warship in space. A space battle, most likely. Many on the beach begin to look up, and an unsettling silence befalls on the entire beach. Without saying a word, I know all 5 of us come to the same conclusion. The space colonies that declared independence just a little over 3 hours ago have also declared war. Steve walks over to the MP officer after the 2 make eye contact. A sinking feeling enters my stomach that I cannot yet fully explain. A sense of worry and confusion is written over my friends' faces, as is on mine, I'm sure. Steve only briefly returns to us to explain that he must leave with the MP officer. He hands the keys to the Jeep to Dylan and gives us all a hug before he leaves. He gives no further reason as to why he must leave, but by now, everyone has come to the same conclusion, us along with the rest of the people on the beach. Maybe even the entire world knows by now. We leave soon after Dylan gets a feeling that traffic will soon pile up on the road. I don't know if that was his fortune cookie thinking, or just a guess based on the observation of the battle in space. I flip to the radio dial from the front passenger seat of the Jeep. News of the space battle is on most of the radio waves. The colonies, now calling themselves the Principality, launched a surprise attack some 3 minutes after the Declaration of Independence, according to some reports. That was really the only concrete report we could find. Any station attempting to discuss the results of the battle tended to go dark very suddenly, likely to prevent any further panic. If the government keeps shutting down any news covering the battle, does that mean we lost the battle? Valerie asked. Most likely, Dylan says somberly. It must be a pretty bad loss if the Federation is trying to keep this silent about it. Why would they call Steve in from the reserves though? Maggie begins to say. The Principality is so far away from us. It's not like the war was spread all the way to here. I'm sure it's just out of precaution, right, Dylan? I say to him. I expected Dylan to agree in my attempt to reassure Maggie, but instead he speaks in his usual fortune cookie way to me. You should get out of Sydney before it's too late, before there's a mass panic and the flights get cancelled. How do you know they're going to cancel the flights? I ask him. Call it a feeling. We drop the girls off at their home. I hug them goodbye. Maggie adds a light kiss on my cheek. It's slightly out of character for her, but given the circumstance, I feel I can understand and likely kiss her back on the cheek. As Dylan drives me home, I notice a more serious tone from him. I can practically feel some type of tension in the air around the Jeep. Whether it's out of worry or just him stuck inside his head with his thoughts, I cannot tell. Do you know something we don't? I ask him. He takes a moment to respond and then tells me it's nothing. I recall moments back in high school when he would go against his feelings of intuition. They were minor things, of course, like selecting one answer over another on a test, only to find out that his first choice was the correct one all along, or deciding on what moves to make in a video game. The best examples are perhaps when he drove and felt the urge to change or stay on the current route, only to find out that he made the wrong choice for refusing to go with his gut. It's like he doesn't fully believe in his judgment because of how good it really is. At a time like this, I hope he keeps listening to his instincts. He pulls the car over and drops me off. He tells me to stay safe and to enjoy my last day before leaving back to Brisbane. We part ways and I return home, not knowing when or if I will ever see my friends again. I greet my parents as I walk into the house. My dad, now watching the television in the living room, asks me if I know what's happened. I tell him what I know from the radio and from what I saw in the sky. I also tell him about the MP officer coming to take Steve. My dad tells me that if the reserves are being called in this quickly, that it can't be good. He tells me to stay away from any recruiting stations, to stay far away from the military. They won't care for you, they'll give you a pat on the back and then forget about you once the war is over. And that's only assuming our side wins, he says. The television news stations manage to show some images of what looks like to have been the start of the battle. Beyond that, not much is shown. Just the same 15-second long video on an endless repeat cycle with news anchors and correspondents talking over it. I begin to pack my things with not much else to do. After a final dinner with my parents, my dad takes out the telescope and looks up to the night sky. The big difference between this war and all the ones before it is that anyone with access to a clear night sky can clearly see if something is happening in space. We live just at the edge of the city where light pollution is not as bad, making for even better quality views for stargazing. For better or worse, we don't see any signs of a battle on this night. If any fighting is going on, it might be taking place on the moon or on the other side of it. If it's on the moon, then the brightness of the surface would surely outshine any flashes of a battle. The only exception being if it was light from a nuclear weapon. On the next day, I finish packing and prepare to leave to the airport. My mom cuts my hair for a final time before I leave. She tells me that if there's a girl I'm keeping secret from the family back in Brisbane, that she wants to meet her before my graduation. I joke, telling my mom that I will only bring her home for a visit if she promises to behave herself. She lightly hits me over the head. I tell my parents goodbye at the airport and give them each a hug. For the entire time since I awoke in the morning, I can't help to shake a strange, lonely feeling growing inside me. There was a melancholy feel in the air that grew around me the closer it came time to telling my parents goodbye. I sit down at the terminal to make sure I don't miss my flight. On the television, there is more news coverage about the war. Apparently, the Principality is using some new weapon that is given the name of Cyclops by the so-called news experts. I watch to see if they have any footage of this so-called new weapon, but all I managed to see from the poor video quality is a red blur flying in between the warships. The footage always stops right before it seems there's about to be some explosion. I lose interest with the news failing to report on anything new. I look out the large window as my scheduled flight arrives. I wonder if I should call Maggie before my flight leaves, or see if there's been any word from Steve. He might know more than the actual news outlets. I take out my phone to tell my parents that I'm about to board the plane first. As I touch the screen on my phone, a news alert appears on all the television screens in the airport. This breaking news alert feels different from the way it was announced and how sudden it cut into the program. The news anchor, sitting at his desk, looks at the camera and informs everyone that one of the neutral colonies has gone silent. The last message received from the colony was that it had spotted warships from the Principality approaching its airspace. Complete silence after that from a colony that holds at least 3 million people who call it home. On the screen is an image of the new Cyclops weapon approaching the colony from space. Its giant red eye almost staring back at the camera, like we're its main target. And the war is to spread everywhere this image is shown to.